I then after I finished up the program, I went and got I guess this is sort of like towards the end of the program. I got my first job it's a very, very, very tiny startup. So I stopped working at the theater and started working at this, like literally it was me and this one woman, and the woman had started it, and she had different business cards for like who she was going to go meet with. So she was like, I'm the CEO. Now I'm the CFO. Now I'm the CMO, like depending on what she had to do.
Yeah.
And, it was a sort of, it was called Fetch Food. And the whole point was it was like what Grubhub is now, but it clearly didn't win. Clearly, other services were much more reliable, but it was actually a pretty cool experience because we had, it was literally just her and me, and she had worked with some friends and built the software, and it was this sort of online portal that you could go in and put into websites for these restaurants, but then we were literally hoofing it to different restaurants in Baltimore and buying them fax machines because it would come through the fax machine, and then they would take the faxes and then the orders, and then there was just so many like random little issues, like why would you call it Fetch Food if it's not a delivery service?
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, so it's not a delivery service?
If the restaurant delivered, then it would. Then yes, but if like other than that, it's not like it's not like Uber Eats or anything. It's like
It's like you phone your order ahead early.
Right, or it was more like you could
fax it
order online.
Okay.
Like you could order it over the computer, and then it would fax the thing to the restaurant, and the restaurant would get it, and then they would call. Anyway, it was not as seamless as
Right.
It wasn't
what you're describing right now. I mean, it sounds like it. I don't know why it's not $1 billion idea.
But it didn't end up working out, and eventually it went under. But that she didn't want to accept that. But then when I stopped getting paychecks, I was like,
I left theater so I could actually get paid.
Have a paycheck, and now I continue to not get paychecks. So then I got a job at the Baltimore Sun, in their online advertising department, and built ads for all kinds of small businesses around Baltimore and all kinds of random stuff. But I got to learn a lot, get my feet wet in like dealing with clients and dealing with customers in that way, like in sort of an advertising sense. And then I'd been there for like a year and a half or so, and a friend of mine had left the Sun, and that was also right around the time so the Tribune had bought the Sun, and they were doing all kinds of layoffs. It was like, I mean, the newspaper industry is obviously, having a rough go of it, and it certainly wasn't doing that great back then either. So it's the beginning of where we are now. And so I ended up getting a job from this company called Millennial Media. And Millennial they started out doing ads on mobile phones like before people were really doing that. So I was like the 30th employee, and I was the first hire in the art department, or in like the creative department. And and it was actually really, really cool. So that's probably like the beginning of Millennials, probably like the hardest I've ever worked, but also like it was so cool. Like we were getting to really make stuff that didn't exist. Like I mean, now I feel like an asshole saying this, but like I literally personally like coded and built and designed one of the very first interstitial ads that ever happened on a mobile phone, which is like now you should hate me for that, but like
we've got you to blame, huh?
Like
like you and that guy who did auto-tune.
Yes, exactly. That guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at the beginning, it was really, really fun. And like the phones were, it was like, do you know much about like web design or web coding stuff at all?
Nope.
Well, there's like, so like the basics of, building a website are like, you've got, there's three main sets of languages. There's like a sort of structural language, there's a design language, and then there's these sort of behavioral languages that make things happen. The phones at the beginning could only barely do the structural language.
Okay.
Could barely do HTML. Yeah. And that was really pushing it. So, they couldn't do CSS at all. They couldn't do anything that, made anything really look cool. So it was a constant challenge to figure out how to use these kind of technologies that were on the computers, like had blown way past it. And everyone was now having these phones in their hands, and they were used to computers doing X, Y, and Z. And they were kind of like immediately like, why doesn't my phone do it? And you're like, cause it's not as smart as your computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, so it was really cool to kind of grow along with the technology there.
Do you remember what the ad you coded? Do you know what the ad was for, or remember what the ad was for?
Yeah. One of so there was one for, it was a car company. I feel like it was, I don't remember what, it was a car.
Okay.
And then the second one I made that I was really proud of was for the movie Jackass. Jackass 2, I think. But I made this whack-a-mole game.
Yeah.
I coded this game and made it work on a pretty large number of phones, which was pretty cool. And so it was like the thing I was really proud of was like you'd have like the little heads would pop up, like, what's this Johnny Knoxville's head? And then if you tapped on him, then it made it look like somebody beat him up before he went back down. So it was like just, fun little actions like that. Crazy story. So anyway, I build this thing. I designed this thing and I build this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And at that time we had a couple of interns, or we had just like college interns coming in and helping. And then a couple of years later, this kid comes back, and interviews with me to get an official job on the design team. Mm-hmm. And he put that ad in his portfolio. And I was like, bitch, I made that thing. I made that. I designed it. I built it. I did everything for it. Like, you're coming in here. I've worked with you before. You're coming in here and you're showing me my work in your portfolio. I was like, that is baller. Like, yeah, it is. No, you were not going to come work here because you're really dishonest. But like, daggone, dude. Intense. Like, you're going to steal stuff. At least make sure you're not showing it to the person you stole it from.
Right?
Anyway, so I worked there, and after about, we kept hiring people, and we grew the team, and then, and the guy who basically been my boss and had been sort of like the head of all of creative, but then was like, he moved into more of a product role, and then I had taken over most of the team, and then I ended up, helping build the team. We ended up having designers in, by the time I was no longer in charge of it, we had, people in Singapore, in London, in Baltimore, and in LA, and we were, supporting this worldwide business. And after a couple of years of that, I would say I'd been doing it for 3 or 4 years. I was starting to get really bored because we were just making boring stuff. And I was, this sucks. Because we have, these phones can do so much cool stuff, but people just don't understand it because it's so complicated, technically. And the people that really don't understand it are our salespeople. And so, what we need them to sell better things so that we can make better things. It's just that simple. Yeah. So I went to my bosses and I said, hey, here's the deal. We need the sellers to sell better things. They don't understand it. It's too complicated. And it's also really like, there's no reason to make any of them have to really understand this. Like, so here's what I want my job to be. I want to help them sell cooler stuff. Mm-hmm. So I went to my bosses and I said, I don't want to have a number attached to my name. I don't want to be a salesperson. I want to be sort of like a sales engineer and help them, help pitch pre-sales stuff for them. Yeah. Them pitch cooler stuff. And if you don't let me do it, I quit.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, cool, go do it. I was like, awesome. And that's what's so great about like startup land is like, as long as you're genuinely out there trying to like make the thing better in general, people will let you get away with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like going up and just being like, yes, I'm going to do this now. You guys are going to pay me.
Right. Exactly.
And your options are like, keep paying me and I'll do that, or like just stop paying me and I will not do anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what happens sometimes. You know what I mean? So then I did that for a while, and that was actually really, really fun. And I got to travel a lot when I did that job. I went and, I met with agencies all over the world actually, and, I got to go to Brazil, got to go to London and France and Germany. And, it was really cool. I got to go, just help. And what was really awesome about that job was I got to just like make the coolest, like I got to develop and design the coolest things that could be done in an ad space on these phones. And then like, I just got to go around and just be like, look how cool this is. Don't you want to play with it at these meetings? So we'd come to these lunch and learns, and they're, and I would bring this, I had these giant backpacks full of iPads that I loaded up with all these toys. And I basically would be like, here's a sandwich and an iPad. Like, go nuts, have fun. Don't make boring. Don't buy anything boring. Now that you see what you can do. I did that for a while, and then, and that was great. And then built a team for that. And so I ended up having, so I had 3 full-time like pre-sales designers, and then had a bunch of people like on the rest of the teams that would kind of come in and out when they had time.
Okay.
Which was awesome because it sort of helped keep the creative teams, excited, cause you'd get to, instead of just being in the, stuck in the back of the office, like every once in a while you get to leave get unchained from the desk and go see like, what
exactly.
it's really for.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then, AOL, bought Millennial Media.
Okay.
And actually right during the acquisition for that, I actually had my kid. So, so I was actually out on maternity leave when this was all announced. And then when I got back from maternity leave, they were like, hey, we think that in this new setup with AOL that you should come over and sort of handle, like innovation stuff. Okay, that sounds cool. And so I ended up being on a team, in this sort of new organization where, what the role was supposed to be and what the role ended up being were 2 totally different things, obviously.
Yeah.
And what it ended up being was whenever the executive level people would have an idea, it would come to our team to vet it for like, is it a good business plan? Is it a good business idea? Like, how much would it cost? Do people want it? Would it work? Like, just make a couple of prototypes of it and see if you can make something out of it or not. And what's funny about that, like, that was really, really fun. And it was like, in the meantime, we were working on all kinds of like, one of our main, like I was working with Tim Armstrong, who was the CEO of it. And I was having weekly meetings with him, and his whole thing would be like, I just want to make ads not suck. So like, make some stuff that makes ads not suck. And I'd be like, okay. So then we'd go brainstorm and try and figure out, come back with like 15, 20 things. So you're like, what do you think? And he'd be like, no, those still suck. And we were like, no, right? This is a hard problem. So we kept coming back and forth. But what's funny about that time is most of the stuff I'm most proud of are the things that I stopped them from making. Like they had a lot of, there's a lot of executives that like, a lot of times when you're meetings, like the person that gets to make the decision is either the loudest, person that has the highest title.
Yes.
And those are the people's things who get done, even if they're not even smart at all.
Right. They make the most noise.
Yeah,
Yes.
whoever makes the most noise wins. And so there's this guy, Tom Chi, Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
He used to work at, he was at Google